Welcome everyone to our inaugural String Wag. I'm hoping that this will be a regular, like once a term event for our little community to come together and chat about important things such as string teaching and string playing. Say that in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to this land and sea and community, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. So for those of you who I don't know, I think lots of familiar faces there. My name's Kyriakou and I love the string teaching community that we are part of, and really happy to be wagging with our very special guest today. So tonight, Loreta Fin joins us. Are you there, Loreta? Are you on?
I am indeed here. Can you hear me?
I can, really loud
Yep.
and clear.
Now, you have locked my video, so I can't put myself on.
Is that better?
Start my video. Hello.
Cool.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all.
So
Happy Wednesday. I hope you've all come armed.
Really well. The gorgeous and amazing Loreta Fin needs no introduction, but you're going to get one anyway. So tonight our string wag is on sharing top tips for beginner string programs, and I'm so thrilled to introduce you to the gorgeous Loreta, who, as I said, really doesn't need any introduction. She studied at the Sydney Con and has since performed regularly in chamber music and orchestral concerts. She's been the principal viola player with the Queensland Pops for over 25 years. Loreta has held the position of Director of Strings and Instrumental Music at Somerville House School in Brisbane from 1992 to 2021. She's presented at many Australian National Music Conferences as well as 2 ASTA conferences, so she's international and has adjudicated at major competitions around Australia. She was a committee member of ASTA for over 25 years, serving as both state and national president during that time, and she received the Queensland State Award in 2009. Loreta is a federal examiner with the AMEB. She is currently the state advisor for strings, and she has also served on the Education Advisory Committee for ASTA and the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. Loreta has conducted orchestras in the State and Australian Honours Ensemble program in Brisbane. She's composed over 100 works for string orchestra and more recently a beginner string series, which we're going to hear more about today. And Loreta was honoured to receive the National Award for Services to Music and String Teaching in Australia at the 2015 ASTA National Conference. Welcome to String Wag, Loreta Fin. It is awesome to have you as our very first guest.
Thank you, Karen, and everyone. Great to be here. I feel like Miss What's-Her-Name on the Romper Room School. Now I'm really showing my age, and I can see Kimbo. Hello, Kim.
Hello, Loreta.
Hello, Helen. Hello, Andrea. And I know lots of you. Hello, Bronnie. And now I need to put my glasses on because I can't see anyone else. Anyway, let's go because we've got lots to talk about.
But Loreta's going to go first. We're going to share our top 5. Mine aren't in a hierarchy. Are yours in a hierarchy, Loreta?
Not really. But, you know, having said that, my first, the overarching thing about my presentation is sequence is the key to success. That's the one major point that I want you to take away, and that one word can say so much. In other words, you know, if you just find yourself a list of things that can be a direction to an orchestra or a class of students or even an individual student, one word says so many things. I often talk a lot. Those of you who know me know this is great, but I don't in the classroom if I can help it. I will often take lots and lots of little shortcuts. So I want to preface the first point by saying this is what I do. And if you find anything here helpful, by all means, beg, borrow, steal, any of that. But I'm not by any means saying this is what you should be doing. It's just me sharing what I do. So number 1, setup, posture. Sequence is really, really important. One tip that I can give you is if I'm standing in front of a class, I will mirror the class. Let me just find my little practice bow here. Here's another tip. For years, I threw away broken bows, and now I saw them off at the edges, round them off nicely, and use them as practice bows, and then you haven't got all the weight of everything else. But I will, does that look like I'm bowing your direction? Yeah, okay, well, I'm actually bowing with my left hand, and I'm showing you a down bow and an up bow. Whereas if I do it in my proper bowing arm, I'm showing you that direction, which to you looks like I'm going up and down that way. So that's one tip, is to mirror the class. Setting up the actual instrument, we've all heard that we need to come from above, but the sequence that I use is grab the shoulders, find the button, up, over, shoulder, head. So again, I'm doing it back to front so I can stand in front of them and see. They're not going to notice that my chin rest is on the wrong side and all of that sort of thing, but it's just so I can give them the instruction that they need to copy me. Remember, I had a class of 60 odd kids in the class, so that was always a challenge. Okay, so that's that one. Then just simple things like setting up pizzicato, rock, water pistol, letter C. So we're keeping these fingers still in the rock, and then we're going to the edge of the fingerboard. And then one other tip that I have is you just put a little sticker on the instrument there, so that stops them straight away from doing their pizzicato over the F holes. Because I still see that a lot in children, even big kids that have been playing for a long time, doing pizzicato over the F holes rather than up on the fingerboard. Okay, setting up the left hand. If I want to draw attention to the thumb on either hand, I say, "G'day, mate," so that they know I'm talking about the thumb. So I talk about banana thumbs. So I don't want banana thumbs, okay? And then setting up the left hand is, "G'day, mate." We're going to use that first finger mark on the other side, and we're going to play raindrops. Now, I'm not using forefinger in that first couple of weeks, but I am going to get that hand to come here, yeah, into that shape. So I can say from the knuckles to the elbow, from the knuckles to the elbow is a straight line, and they all chorus back that to me. From the knuckles to the elbow is a straight line, and then is this a straight line? Is this a straight line? Is this a straight line? Cellos, basses, is this a straight line? Is this a straight line? Is this a straight line? So that that attention being drawn to that immediately, and getting all those four fingers hovering over, doing little raindrops on the strings very lightly. My philosophy about playing is kids want to play tunes. I know that a lot of people start with open strings, trying to get that beautiful straight bow, but there's only so much you can do on open strings. It's not playing a song. And my way of my sequence of teaching was to take that that left hand and get O1 and 2 on in first term, so that we could then play the Mi Re Do songs. Those of you who have a Kadai program at school, we can steal their songs from their program, and we can do the ones that we all know: "Oh Claire de la Lune, Mary Had a Little Lamb," "Hot Cross Buns," all by the end of term 1. Concert for the parents, beautiful. Okay, so setting up the bow hold. Lots and lots of bow hold practice at the end of term 1. So pizzicato for term 1 only. And then here's my bow, not a pencil, you'll notice, a straw. And I know we can't use plastic straws anymore, but those big, thick shaped straws are just the right roundness for a child's bow. But look what happens if I hold my bow tightly. It's going to wreck my straw. So that is why I use a straw rather than a pencil, and it's nice and light. Okay, I can talk about down bow, up bow, etc. down the track when I've done this. First of all, shake, 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 palm towards the ceiling, bend, straighten, bend, straighten, bend. Which one do we want? We want the bent one. Find the top line, turn it over, aye, aye, captain. Now, if I have a banana thumb, I can't do aye, aye, captain, because it's all squashed. And now I have my beautiful bunny rabbit. Say hello to my bunny rabbit. There he is, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. But don't turn your bunny into a fox, because what do foxes eat? Bunnies. So you want your bunny rabbit to be nice and loose and flexible. Pop that straw in there, thumb goes under, cellos and basses ready, steady, flop, everyone in fact, and then all we have to do is pick that up and put it in there. Now for my beginners, I did use a pinky nest, which is actually a little thing that I got our groundsman to make. So it's got a little hole there and a little slit that slides onto the bow, and then it just gives them a little bit of support. Oh yeah, there it is. A little bit of support to get that pinky up and balanced, so it's not falling off and tempted to do that. I actually can't even do that because it's not fitting. So that's my first bunch of tips. Okay, so beg, borrow, or steal, any of that, it's yours. Thank you.
Amazing. Loretta, you could just like run the next hour just on all of that. And I love all your little songs and your chants, and kids just love being involved in calling them out and reinforcing that. That's awesome for them. All right.
Thank you.
My first tip is, well, just a little reminder, there's lots of Melbourne people here. And we've gone international as well. We've got someone from New Zealand, I think, who was going to come. So we are international. But Melbourne here, we were the most locked down, city almost in the whole world over 2020. And it really changed the way that we all taught. And, hats off to I wasn't doing a lot of teaching at the time. I mostly work for arts orgs these days, but in education. But teachers were doing amazing, amazing, amazing things. And I stole this tip from my friend Shanthi Charrett, who was head of strings at Hayley Breed. Now she works at PEGS, Penley and Essendon Grammar. And her tip was, although I realised it wasn't hers because Loretta's actually already done it because I went to her website and saw it, was making a whole bunch of little videos on how to hold the bow, how to set up the bow, how to set up your instrument. And these were for parents. So because the lessons were all on Zoom and it was really hard to get students to engage, just making these tiny little videos. You could send them the YouTube link or the private link in Compass or whatever your school uses to share, or even on a website. And it was just a really great way of making sure that what was happening at home was what was happening in the lesson, because as we know, they spend more time at home, hopefully practicing, than they do in the lesson. And that means the parents can work together. And so that is my first tip, is if you can either get your hands on other people's amazing videos like Loretta's, and she's going to show you hers shortly or later, or make your own with your own teachers so that students get to know their own teachers as well. And then you can always have like the teacher in your practice room with your student. I think that's an awesome tip, and it wasn't mine. There you go. Loretta.
Okay. Tip number 2, a word paints 1,000 pictures instead of a picture paints 1,000 words. Okay, so I use lots and lots of little catch cries that mean lots of words, but it's just one word. So let me start first of all by, at the beginning of a rehearsal with 60-something children being tuned and making noise, or at the beginning of a rehearsal of 20, 25 and up to 55 in some ensembles that I had, lots and lots of noise. So I used a cue for them to understand this is the rehearsal is about to begin. You need to put your instrument down in front of you if they were sitting on the floor for the beginner violins, or if it was an ensemble, in your chair, bow ready, resting position, mouths closed, we're about to start. And that was usually, I'll just do that quickly here. They're just a simple...
Well, we couldn't even hear that. I couldn't hear that.
You couldn't hear it. It was just a D major, bomb, 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 with my 10 piano lessons that I've had in my life, and my playing by ear. Okay, so that was the first one. That's a simple thing to get started. Next one, flagpole. Okay, flagpole means we all know what a flagpole is. We all use that as part of our bowing exercises. But flagpole for me is one word to say, get your bow off the string, shut your mouth, listen to me. I'm about to tell you something really, really important. So you're not playing, you're not speaking. Now, if you spend every rehearsal trying to say, stop talking, I'm about to tell you something, stop talking, flagpole, boom. Now, I still use that in the SHEP rehearsals that I do. I don't know those kids. I meet them on a Friday and we have a concert on the Sunday. So I sometimes have to be careful because I don't know, when you know your students, you can talk to them a little bit differently. But that flagpole, trust me, it works. Statue of Liberty is my way of saying you need to get your L bone. This thing here is what I call the L bone. It's actually called a weenus, but I'm not going to say that word to primary school children. So get your weenus up. That's just a good thing to say. So your L bone, as you know, if you come from below, your bow is going to look like this. And if you come from above, you've got that already set up. That works for all instruments, violin, viola, cello, bass. Silver to gold. Okay, we've spent our lives saying use the whole bow. So what I do, I don't know if you can see this, there's a little gold dot.
Oh,
there you go. And it's one of those Sharpies, which I've now lost because I'm looking for it, of course. Oh, there it is. There you go. Just one of those little gold pens. Okay, it's not going to hurt the bow. And that, if I say silver to gold, that means use your whole bow. But if I say silver to gold and I go stop, and I say, did you get to gold? And there's the visual to say, no, I actually didn't get to gold. And I find that is a much clearer way of them seeing that. Later on, I'm going to put an M right in the middle, and you'll notice the hair is flat. That's for the middle of the bow, obviously. And this one, the balance point, I'm going to turn slightly that way and put it underneath a little bit, because when we're playing at the balance point spiccato, we want that stick to tilt over a little bit. So there's another little idea that you might want to beg, borrow, or steal. Check your home base note. Home base note is the first finger. And if the first finger is not in the right spot, everything else is wrong. So just a simple check before we start. Are you ready? Check your home base note. Let's start. The next one is check your C curve. So you've got your two C's here. And so one side here, I'm going to check the middle of my C, and then I'm going to roll my bow over, and I can see, I'm not in the middle of my C curve. So I need to do this. So cellos and basses, really easy to see because you're looking down. But on the violin, it's not as easy to see. So I'm going to go bow in the middle, silent, not a sound, just rolling it. And then you're also getting that up and down movement of a string cross. But you're also starting with the bow straight instead of starting with the bow like that or like that, which we don't love. Okay, this is one for teenage girls. Especially ones that I don't know. If I'm working with a group that I've not met, I will always talk about forward on your chair, feet flat, 1, 2 with the little ones. I want the feet to go 1, 2 on the ground. Okay, once I've taught that, then I say, if I see someone whose legs are crossed or wrapped around the chair or whatever, I'm not going to single you out and embarrass you. You'll hear me go, legs. And that means that I've seen somebody with the legs not in the right place. I'm not going to point you out. I'm just going to go legs. But of course, sometimes when the offender is, repeated, I'm actually going to look at that person just before I say legs and go legs and swing my head away from them so that nobody really knows who it was that I was looking at just before I said legs, meaning don't play with your legs crossed. No banana thumbs, I've always said. Check that your thumb knuckle is bent downwards, because what does bend mean? I mean, that is actually bent, isn't it? So just make that clear that the thumb knuckle is bent down on the bow. Jack in the box is a good way of getting cellos to make sure that their legs are in the right place. They cannot stand up quickly. If any of them cannot stand up quickly if their feet are not squarely planted on the ground. And then with regards to tuning, intonation, almost, kind of, sort of, and nearly in tune are all out of tune. 3 + 3 equals 5.9 recurring is almost, kind of, sort of, and nearly correct. But in your maths test, you will still get a red cross. So it's exactly the same with tuning, almost, kind of, sort of, nearly out of tune. And I will just say almost, kind of, sort of, yeah, and they know, she's talking about the tuning. I have another thing that I do with more advanced orchestras for intonation. We probably won't get that far today, but and I always say practice makes progress, not perfect. Practice makes progress. I know my book says practice makes, one of my big regrets about my beginner book, practice makes perfect, it says. And I no longer say that, because I've started saying that to my grandkids. Practice makes progress, as long as we are better this week than we were last week. But no practice, no progress. So we have to do that practice to get the progress.
Yeah. And that's in line too with all that growth mindset of those goalposts are never finite. They're just continuous. It's a continuum. So, yeah. Publishing. Loretta, can I ask you a question about all of those things that you've shared with us? And I know we're only at point 2, which is when you do your string programs in your school, I know you're not there full time anymore, but when you had your team, do they all use the same terminology? Are you all sharing the same language and the same techniques and tricks with your staff, and are you all using it consistently? Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to actually have a helper in the room most of the time. So it would be there. All of my teachers were seeing that class at some point, so they were hearing the language that we were using. And even with the classroom music teacher, I had lots of discussions with her saying, okay, what are you calling this, and you know, what are you saying, so that I was able to use the same language that she was using. And with the classroom music program, some of the things that they're doing in the classroom will translate to what we're doing, and others won't. So for instance, if they're doing sol la mi re do, that's A B A F sharp E D, so you can steal all of that repertoire. But if they're doing you know, a song that doesn't have solfa, then that's not going to be as easy to translate, unless it's an easy song, you know, like Twinkle Twinkle. But then they tend not to do far. So anyway, we're not going to go into the pedagogical whatevers of Kodai, but there were lots of things that did cross over, and we certainly made that overtly pointed out to the kids that this is the same as what Miss Hennessy was saying.
Yeah, they want to make the connections that music and violin or music and cello are the same subject. It's the same thing. Awesome.
And they do think it's different. They think that's Miss Hennessy's class, that's Miss Finn's class. It's not the same. But so we needed to point that out sometimes.
All right. Are we only up to tip 2? I think I'm only up to my tip 2 now. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got very short ones. Mine are the brain break tips, and Loretta's like the nuts and bolts. So mine today is a very fundamental one, but so much time is wasted in class when the instruments aren't ready to be played, when they don't work, when there's a broken string, when there's a shoulder rest missing or rosin missing. So my number 1 tip is, like, before the beginning of every program, this is like before, as you're about to give the instruments out for your program, is to make sure that every instrument is student ready, that all the teachers know to make their instruments student ready, and not to waste time on that, and to train the students that if something's happened to their instrument, to drop it off in the morning, not at the beginning of class, so that someone hopefully has the time to fix it. That's my second tip.
Okay, on to the use of your voice. This is something I will often use when I'm adjudicating a competition, talking about expression in the music and telling the story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl, her name was Red Riding Hood. She went into the forest and she met a wolf. Oh, I am very frightened, she said. Rara, said the wolf, I am going to eat you. Oh no, said the girl, I am so frightened. Now, there was no expression in my voice. If your voice is like that to a bunch of 7 and 8 year olds, they're going to switch off so quickly. So use your voice really, really well. So that's my first tip about the voice. The other one is singing. Sing everything. Because if you do the same thing 10 different ways, they think they're doing 10 different things, and you're actually doing the same thing. So for instance, if we're teaching a simple song, you can sing the solfa. You don't have to sing the solfa, but letter names, show the fingers and sing the letters, show the fingers and sing the fingers. How about we talk about bow direction eventually when we're using the bow? Vertical bows, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, whatever the rhythm is. So that way it's much lighter than that way, okay? But then also we're getting that down, up direction, but we're singing something different. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Then we can turn it this way and practice the open, close, keeping that little finger there so you can keep that elbow still so it's not wandering away from your finger. Fast, 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 slow. Sing the speed of the bow as well. So we're bringing their attention to bow speed. Half, 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 whole, whatever you want to do there. So there are lots of different ways to teach the same thing, lots of different ways. So singing fingers, singing letters, singing speed, singing bow direction, showing the contour. Fees, E, D, E, fees, 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 E, E, E. So where the music goes higher and lower. And then by the time they go to play the piece, they know it really well by ear. And in fact, most of the time, I didn't actually even use the book in the class. I would teach it orally and then go, and if you want to have a look at that, open up on page 12 when you get home. There it is right there. Okay. So thinking of different ways of doing things, and I was saying, by the way, O for open, not 0 or whatever, because you only want one syllable to suit each note that you're going to be singing. But I've always said this, if you can think of lots and lots of different ways of explaining the same thing, that's fantastic. But as soon as you think of 10 ways of explaining the same thing, you will meet the 11th child. You will have to think of another way. So it's just something that, as our learning curve as teachers, is a lifelong thing. I'm still coming up with things going, that's the one that got across to that particular child because my other 10 ways didn't. So always keep your mind open to thinking of new and better ways of doing things, or just more ways of doing things.
Yeah. And of course, all those things have to be differentiated as well for the students that just take longer to get those things. So yeah, we'll talk about that too. Awesome. Thank you, Loretta. My tip number 3, similar lines actually. My third tip is to include singing and movement in each lesson as part of the learning and also for brain breaks. So learning a string instrument is quite a complex challenge for many students, and engaging the whole body and not just fingers and shoulders and arms. Embodied pedagogy, if you will, in the learning helps to make learning meaningful, keeps the students energized, and it offers brain breaks for students. And quite a lot of instruction is delivered to students in the early lessons especially, and so in order to help them process, if you can physicalize a lot of the learning, which we're on the same page with that, but also be singing everything, because not everybody, like the schools I teach in at the moment are very, very diverse backgrounds, very high refugee population, students, families are new arrivals, not much English spoken at home. These are the schools I work in, and so I can't make assumptions about what people understand. And so the idea that people know their bodies the best, that's the thing that they know the best, so you use your body to teach, and that's also with your voice, because those semitones and those tones that they're playing might be really, really foreign sounding to those students, even if they're playing perfectly in tune. So singing and just stretching and stamping rhythms and clapping rhythms as well, just to physicalize the learning. That's my third tip.
Great. And that, yeah, I agree with that. It's with regards to the brain break, but also the physical break, because it's hard holding up an instrument. That was another little thing I used to do too. We used to do this right at the beginning stages. You've got to hold your instrument way above your head, and each week we broke our record. So last week we could hold it for 30 seconds, and then we go 40, and then some little smart aleck would come in and go, I got to 100. So of course everyone had to get to 100, which was awesome. So that's building the muscle in their arms and shoulders, because it's hard. But when we weren't actually playing, when the violins were sitting down, because I had my violins and violas standing, and so the violins would sit down with the instruments in front of them, and we would do a lot of that singing stuff in a seated position, or we would, walk around the room, whatever, we're trying not to tread on our instruments. So my next point is very much talking about the sequence, and on my website there is the sequence, or the overview of what I did with my year 3s. You'll see that in the resources page, a little bit more about that later, but essentially it was this. Again, I'm not saying this is what you should be doing. This is what I did, and I found that it worked. In the first term, it was all about posture and getting that left hand nicely positioned and actually playing a few notes. Do, re, mi, everything was pizzicato. So we only focused really on this hand, just making sure that we had that. That's pretty easy for them to do. I taught D, E, F sharp, or D, E fis, as we used to sing, because if you sing D, E, F sharp, you've changed the rhythm. So D, E, fis, E, D, etc. So the do, re, mi songs I would steal from the classroom, plus the ones that we all know, Eau Claire de la Lune, Mary Had a Little Lamb, Hot Cross Buns. And then I would talk about D, E, F sharp, transferring the position of the do to the A string. So the D do becomes an A do. Transferring the position of the do is called transposition. So we would learn the word transposition. Again, we use the words that musicians use, not baby words. We use the words that musicians use because we are musicians. We're not waiting to become musicians. We are musicians from day one. So ABC, D, E, fis, ABCs. And then that was the end of term 1. And as I said, at the end, last couple of weeks of term 1, we got our straw, and we were doing lots and lots of those bow exercises. Shake, 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 palm towards the ceiling, bend, straighten, bend, find the line, turn it over. Aye, captain, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Don't play a fox, play a rabbit. and underneath, ready, steady, flop, pick up. There you go. Now, that gave them a sequence to go home and go, and I was given this video recently of a girl who's just done her AMUS. She's in year 11 at All Hallows, not the school that I taught at. But her teacher sent me this video that her parents had made when she was in year 3, and she went home and said, this little squeaky voice, look, Mum, look, Dad, this is what we learned today. Shake, arm towards the ceiling, bend straight in bed. And she went with the whole sequence of how to hold her cello bow. So they do remember that little sequence. That's term 1. Term 2, introducing the bow, not the broken bow, but the real bow. Okay, so we're introducing bow, down bow, up bow. Again, lots of bowing exercises. Then putting together, we've got DE fees, we've got ABCs. So DE fees 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. What comes after F in the alphabet? G. Do you have another finger? Yes. Right, that's the next note. We're going to use that. Then we've also learned ABCs. Do you have another finger? Yes. What comes after C? D. D major scale, heaven on a stick. There are so many pieces in D major that we can do. Not just the ones that I have in my book, but lots and lots of others. And again, we now have a string cross, A to feast. So A, feast, D, 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 all of those so me, do, do, do songs are teaching us how to cross that string. That's term 2. Term 3, introducing note reading. So in terms 1 and 2, I didn't do note reading. We did have ABC written out. So that's what my book 1 does. That works really well for very young kids. I've just had a 5-year-old that started last year. She didn't speak English, but she kind of knew the alphabet up to, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, at that stage. And that worked really, really well for her. She understood it was a slow process, and it took her the whole year to do that book 1. But now she's, so here's my philosophy on reading. What do I need to know to read music? I need to know, what is the name of that note? How many fingers do I need? Which string is it on? I can't get my D's mixed up, okay? And the last thing is, what does it look like? So once we learn what does it look like, we have 5 lines on our hand, we have 4 spaces. And that was when I was able to talk to the class in 3 different clefs. So I'd say go back to the known, always start with the known. So let's say if we're going to do Au Clair de la Lune, D, 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 E, F's. I haven't got perfect pitch. D, okay. D, 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 E, F's, E, D, D, E, E, D. Okay, what are you doing, violas? Here's your D. D, 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 E, F's, E, D, D, E, E, D. Basses, here's yours. Cello, here's yours. Let's do that. So that then enables you to talk to the class in the 3 clefs. Again, you can avoid using the book, although now we are trying to read. So my book 2, the main difference is, first book is all pieces we know. Most kids know most of those pieces. Old MacDonald, London Bridge, blah, blah, blah. Book 2, all original pieces. They can't know those pieces because they have to sight read. We want them to read. So that was where the note reading came in, the hand stuff. They already knew that. And then, to be honest, we in term 4, it was about repertoire, dragging out the Christmas carols. We had a competition we have a competition in Queensland, which is one of the largest competitions in the Southern Hemisphere. Just about every school goes in it. So my kids at that level would play 7 or 8 pieces from memory, the whole class all together in unison. That's another really important thing for beginners. Unison, unison, unison. Everything we play in a string orchestra is in unison. All the first violins must play in unison. All the second violins must play in unison, etc., etc. So if they can't play in unison, they can't then eventually branch out and get a chord. So the unison, I think, is really, really important in the first year. So that is the sequence of 1 whole year of teaching a group of 65 kids, violin, viola, cello, and bass.
Dynamite. Amazing. Okay, so my tip number 4 is to have one main focus in your lesson. So although there's other things that you need to do in the lesson, such as obviously posture and bow hold and all that kind of stuff, that you can't keep jumping on and changing direction all the time. It's very, very confusing. So students should be told the learning intention. So today we're going to focus on this, and that your staff and your team should all know that learning intention. And for those of you in Victoria, this is all part of the high impact learning strategies. And I'm just going to put this in the link there. So we have 10 high impact learning strategies for students, and that is one of them, which is explaining the intention to the students so that they can measure where they're going to go and what it is that they need to do to succeed, what success looks like. And in that, learning is modeling and just allowing the students to know what it is that they're aiming for at the end of this lesson. So rather than floating aimlessly at sea, we're giving them a focus. And if you can have all of your staff on that. I've taught in teams before where sometimes if one teacher is leading and then another one jumps in going, everybody needs to check their bow hold, but you're really talking about the other hand and you're really focusing on something with low seconds for the first time ever, that this is not the moment to be talking about the bow, because we're really focusing on learning this new thing. So have one main learning intention and let the students know what that is so that we can all aim and get there together. And I've just posted the link both for Loreta's curriculum stuff and also for that if you're interested in the high impact teaching strategies. It should be teaching strategies, not learning strategies, sorry. Okay, Loreta, your turn.
Well, that leads beautifully into what
I'm going to stop you. There's a question. Can I do a quick question?
Yes.
Just wondering what type of shoulder rest pad would be best thing for violin violas in my Year 3 string program. Is this the time to ask that question? Probably, possibly.
Look, I think it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Whoever that was. Sorry, I'm not
Bethany.
looking at my chat. Who was that?
Bethany from South.
Hi, Bethany.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, hi, Bethany. Yes. Okay. So, at the moment I've got this spongy thing on here, which is not what I use for my Year 3s. It's just what happens to be on this little fiddle that I've got at home. But we used to use sponges, A, because most Year 3s have no neck, and B, because they would spend the entire rehearsal dropping their shoulder rest. I can't put my shoulder rest on, fidget, 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 whinge, whinge, whinge. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. So I would use, and why can't I remember the name of these things? It's a grey sponge, and it's kind of shaped like that. Can anyone remember what it's called?
No. But they're fab. They're great. They save time.
They are really, really good. And all I did then was put an elastic here, thread that through, and then tie it, and then one here, one there. Sorry, that wasn't visible. One here, one there, and then you just slot the sponge underneath, and they can do it. And if it needs adjusting again, they can do it, because it matches not unlike this one, which is shaped like a violin. I think that's the idea it's supposed to be. But the one I'm thinking of has a rounded edge, so it's really easy to know which side goes on the violin.
We've got a name, Loreta. It's Polypad.
No, it's not. Sorry.
Oh, it's also got another name. It's
something plus. Andrea, do you remember?
PSR?
PSR plus.
So, okay, so it's actually the same thing.
Okay, so it probably looks, thank you, Mary. Yeah, Mary's got it. That is it. Now, Mary, turn it up the other way. Can you see how it's got a curve? Yep, that's it. Yeah. Let's turn it up the other way. Keep turning. Stop. Keep turning. Stop. Okay, do you see that curved edge? That's the one that goes against, you can't see Mary? Can everyone see Mary?
Use your arrow and just cycle. I might just get you on the spotlight. There you go, Mary. Yeah.
There you go. See that? Okay, now turn it round the opposite direction. And so that flat one that Mary was showing us goes on the back of the instrument, and then you can see that little shape there that allows the shoulder to fit into there. So the sponge is firm but not hard. Thanks, Mary. That's the one that I would use with my Year 3 strings, and also cheap as chips. If you're getting them in bulk for a class, you're probably only going to pay $10, $15 for them. They might be a little bit more expensive now, but that's pretty much what I used to pay for them. And that was great because it just stopped that whole hassle of having to stop the class. I always say you can't stop a class of year threes. You cannot turn, that's it there, PSR plus. You cannot turn your back on year three. It's like turning your back on the sea. You will get knocked over.
Thank you.
All right. So what you were saying before, there are no other questions up till now. We'll open up for questions in a minute. So let's do this last tip. This one is what I called a staff meeting when I had a group of teachers. And if I'm by myself with an individual student, I'll say, you're the teacher and I'm the student. Now, what Karen was saying before about one thing at a time. So this is after modeling the correct way. So I'm going to play you Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Okay, so here's my first example. And when we were a group of teachers, one teacher would play really fast, another one medium speed, another one really slowly. So you go, I won, I'm the winner, I won. And the class would go, well, no, that didn't sound good. You weren't together. Oh, you actually want us to keep the beat steady and play together. Okay, we'll do that. Next example was we will play perfectly in time. No, that was out of tune, they would say. And I'd say, but I used the right fingers, but I was not on my home base note. So I'm giving them, I've modeled what they should be doing, and now I'm showing them one thing at a time that was not right. Okay, so you want us to play in time and in tune. Okay, we can do that. Here we go. Okay, so now I'm stuck. And then a student would go, okay, oh, they'd all start yelling out. And I would say, okay, can someone come and help me? Let's help me with this. And of course, that would be rigid. And I would say, but why can't you move it? And she said, no, you have to move that back. And I go, well, what do I need to do? So that is where my thing that I use called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pussycat's claw, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you're melting your pussycat's claw into a pussycat's paw, not claw. That works with the left hand too. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 brings me melted, so I can then do that. And I can feel my straight line. Okay, so that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 strategy is a really good one for releasing weight. And then I would say, but not 0, because otherwise you will drop your very expensive Somerville House bow and your parents will be not impressed at having to buy a new bow every week because they're about $100 each. So I'm trying to teach them beat, intonation, posture, and all sorts of other things. So if there's one thing that you're trying to focus on, that's the thing you pick on, but only one at a time. You don't do all of those at once. So the staff meeting, or you're the teacher, I'm the teacher. So if it's a one-on-one student and the little ones just love correcting the teacher doing something wrong.
It's
so
flipping the classroom. Yeah, flipping the classroom, I think we call it. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, well, my last tip is the inclusion of a student-led activity and input from lesson 1. So it could be that the students might choose a different tempo or what string to play on, or create their own rhythm that the rest of the class learns. But in the interest of wanting to have all students invested in their own learning for intrinsic reasons, and their engagement in this way is definitely a value add to your lessons. And by their input as well, you then give them the opportunity to do some self-reflection as well. It's like, well, what do you think? How did that sound fast? How did that sound? You know, is that your favorite string? Does anyone else want to add to that, or whatever it is? But they have their own voice is important in music making, because after all, we do advocate that music is self-expressive, and we need to let that have a little platform as well in the teaching. So that's pretty much the end of my 5 my 5 little points. I was the speedy points, and Loreta was definitely nuts and bolts there, but we did make it. And just before we go to questions, Loreta, is there anything that you want to spruik tonight? Do you want to tell us about your website and those resources?
Well, I mean, look, I think when you hear someone talking about this is how I did it with my 65 kids, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, yeah, right, sure. It's one thing for me to tell you about it. It's another thing for you to see in action what they actually could do. And that this was not a streamed class in any way. It was not, you have to audition to get into the string program. It was a compulsory string program. Every child had to do it. And trust me, not every child was brilliant, but every child could do it. Some children did it better than others, but every child was able to do this. So have a look on the website, on the resources page. You'll see that the videos that I've put up there, these were, of course, when we found ourselves horrendously online. Yep, there we go. Let me just get the back on.
So okay, it looks like this. It'll look like that first, and then you open it up and you get.
That's right. So open that down. So you see it down the bottom, right down the bottom, there's Year 3 staff meeting. So there's an example of how we did the staff meeting. And then also down the bottom, the very bottom, some of the strings performance. No, it's not. Where's
it's there.
Is that the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's my senior kids playing. That's just that's just me posing because they actually sound quite good. But let's see, Year 3 overview handout is in the beginner string series. There is, Year 3, just hover your arrow, Year 3 assembly presentation by Loreta Fin. There it is in junior strings performance. So that is the presentation of what we did in Year 3. And this is, okay, you can see they're in their winter uniform. So this is proof that this is around about July, August, and they've been playing since February. So that's after that amount of time. So you'll see what we do. And a lot of the things that I talked about, you'll see as an example there. So it's I just think it's more powerful to see it happening. So that was that sequence that I was talking about before, and that it does work for every child. But I suppose before I go into questions, I think, for me, doing PD has always been, as a younger teacher, it was like, am I on the right track? Am I on the right track? And you hear someone say something and you think, oh, that's it. I do that. That's great. I'm on the right track. So there's that sort of affirmation of, okay, I feel better about what I'm doing. And I, we agree on some things. We may not agree on everything. The second thing is that I used to maybe do that. Oh, yeah, I used to do that, but that's fallen out of my toolkit, out of my bag of tricks. So I might just reinstate that into my bag of tricks. So to remind you of some things that, oh, yeah, but I used to do that, but slightly differently, so I can tweak that or bring my own great idea back in. And finally, the light bulb moment is like, there was one thing that I heard that was like, whoa, blew my mind. That's going to make my life a whole lot easier. I hope everyone got at least one light bulb out of that.
Yeah, cool. I think that's like the thing is like having this community of people that all have the same problems. We all what was your phrase about inventing the wheel, not reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, well, I always say, that there's no need to reinvent the wheel, because often when the wheel is reinvented, it's reinvented using square wheels. And that it takes a while for someone to realize, actually, you know what, those round wheels, they actually do work quite well. Maybe I'll go back to those round wheels. So I guess to help or to avoid having to reinvent the wheel using square wheels.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm actually running a couple of PDs as well over the next month or so, maybe in 2 weeks and then again in a month. And as many of you know, I work a lot in inclusive education. I teach at special schools, and one of the things I'm quite passionate about is making sure that all students are set up to succeed, and how to cater for students with diverse needs. And so there is a couple of PDs popping up. I'm just going to show you a little link. I'm going to send it out to you anyway, just in case you are interested. But looking at how to differentiate in your classes, how to understand different and complex behaviours that happen with students, particularly neurodiversity in the classroom, and just creative, inclusive lessons for all learners. So that is something that I do as my main job these days. Very little string teaching, I will be honest, but you know, I'm very passionate in the string community, but much more inclusive teaching is probably my bag. So if you're interested in that, they're popping up and I'll let you know a little bit more. But we do have some questions for you, Loreta, so I'm going to read them out to you, and then they're all for you. Probably. One is a cello question, which is, can you give some advice on how to set up year 3 cello students?
Okay, so so with the cello students, we usually start from a standing position and then get them to sit down and making sure that are you a cello? Is that question from a cellist person or a non-cellist?
I suspect
non-cellist.
Non-cellist, maybe. Yeah.
Who asked that question?
It's Sam.
Hi, Sam. Are you a cellist? No. Okay, right. So I always tried, to be honest with you, I always tried to have a cello, an actual cellist there for that setup period, because I just think it's really important to make sure. I didn't want to be responsible for doing the wrong thing. But the most important thing is the feet being secure, and then sitting on the chair straight, not having the spike too far out. I have to say the same for the double bass. I've seen so many double basses with their spike way out the front. So I think that's really important to be aware of where the spike is, so that when they sit, that the middle of the cello is in that middle of the chest region. So it's not up here. The peg on the level with the ear. So those are the sorts of things that you need to look at for each individual child. And it's all about where the spike is, how far it is from the body, and how long you extend the spike. But then that's sitting on the edge of the chair. As we all know, cellists have to sit on the edge of the chair. So should violinists, but sometimes we get away with a bit of slackness, but you can't on the cello. So that's sitting forward on the chair. The other thing with the cellist is I'd often just go the jack in the box that I was saying, which really resets that position, that posture. Okay, then the knuckles to the elbow straight line, that's pretty much the same as everybody else's, just making sure that the thumb on the left hand is actually behind, so the thumb's not sticking out in the air. I still see in Amy B exams, I don't know about other examiners, but you see this vibrato happening, and the thumb's just going wild out the back there, instead of being attached to the cello, so that you've got that nice vibrato action going. So set that hand up properly with the thumb pretty much in the middle of the hand.
It's a good opportunity, isn't it, for if there is a cellist who is going to make those little setup demos for their students, to maybe be able to share those. Yeah. If there are no cellists.
There is actually on my website a cello and a bass one that were done by the cello and the bass people. One was done by a Simply for Strings guy, and the other was done by our bass teacher at the time, who's now studying in Germany. So there's something there that you can have a little look at as well, more specifically to the cello. Once they were set up, though, the things that we had in common were all about the straightness of the posture. Yeah, is this a straight line? Is this a straight line? So being mindful of where that arm was, and the bow hold was the straight bow, and then the fingers rounded, and the thumb bent. Actually, I see a lot of cellos, like actually quite well trained cellists, still having that thumb like that. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, I didn't think that was the right way to do it. But I suppose, look, I've had a student who says, I was watching a video of this guy called Isaac Perlman, and Isaac Perlman was playing with his thumb like this, and you always tell me to get my thumb down. And I said, sweetie, when you can play like Isaac Perlman, I don't care how you hold your instrument.
Very good. Okay.
Now, I noticed there was someone put up about the PSR ones. There are two sorts, and the one is kind of thinner and the other is thicker. So you can actually get that. But I found that whatever one I got fit most of them anyway. And they do come in, I think it's a quarter, eighth quarter, or a quarter half, and then a 3/4 full. But most beginners, if you're a year 3 beginner, you're probably on a half size anyway. And then they'll fit on a equivalent to half size, which is a 12-inch viola, 13-inch viola is equivalent to a 3/4 violin, and of course 14 full size.
Yeah. All right, we have another couple of questions about looking for activities for Year 7 programs and beginner string ensembles and ensembles that are different lessons, and what are some resources. Well, I'm going to jump in right at this very second and say I wrote this exactly for you, because it is exactly activities for students who need extra engagement for different levels. And this is called Strings Together, and it works for ensembles and group lessons, and it's a whole bunch of skill building using oral skills and extension activities and ways of developing broader musician skills off the page. So that's really was designed for Year 7 and string programs, and they can get quite complex if you choose to, so really for any level students, but that is my aim is to use them for Year 7 and 8s in string programs. So that would be something, and you can find them on my website. Loreta has written heaps and heaps of repertoire for Year 7 programs. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you've done for
Well, firstly, your book was one of the 4 cupboards full of music that I left at Somerville when I retired at the end of 2021, because I simply couldn't bring them all home, and so a lot of my own personal music is still there. And Raquel Bastos, who is has now taken over my job, is using a lot of that stuff as well. So they're great. Yes, I think what we do need to do with the older beginners is to be really careful about the repertoire that we choose, making sure that it's not too babyish, because they're not going to appreciate that. But there is loads and loads of repertoire that isn't, a babyish. Who asked that question? Can I?
There's a couple, actually. I've sort of merged a few questions in all together.
So I find, of course, what we need to be mindful of with the older beginner is that they will travel much, much faster. So let's say I was the equivalent of that, let's say converting a violinist to a viola player. I actually would go back and do the easy stuff, because when they're trying to learn to read the alto clef, I would go right back there, but I would really go through that repertoire super, super fast, to make sure that then I could say to them, last week you were a beginner, this week you're preliminary, next week we're going to be doing grade 1 and grade 2 the following week, and grade 3 the week after that. So they really feel like they're moving. And I think that's the most important thing, is to be careful of the music that you choose for that age group.
Cool. All right. There's a few. Everyone can sort of read the chat already. Helen Tucky's popped some resources in there about
good on you, Helen.
With Lorraine, and the All for Strings theory books, and Helen's wondering what other resources you use in your private lessons, Loreta.
So in the beginning, so I use all sorts of bits and bobs all over the place. I like Stephen Chin's unison stuff, because that works for one-on-one student, whatever. But there's that consolidation of that D major finger pattern, and then of course alongside the AMEB stuff, and of course with violin in particular. Now most of my students are violin, but we've now got 10 series, and I have in my possession series 2 to series 10. So I'm not short of any violin repertoire. Viola, I do use the Suzuki repertoire, because I think the pieces are great, but they're not sequential. Apologies to any of the Suzuki teachers, but I'm sure that those of you who are teaching Suzuki are supplementing with lots of other things. I love the Mary Cohen studies. I like the Blackwell stuff. So even though the Blackwells weren't the most exciting presenters that I've ever seen, I think Theo and I nearly fell asleep. I think it's a bit more due to the big night we'd had the night before. But anyway, let's not go there.
That's conferences for you, isn't it, Loretta?
What happens at the conference stays at the conference. Yeah. But anyway, there we are.
For 4 days, because we're so excited.
But there are loads and loads of and look, now that we can, and we discovered this. I discovered smart music on during COVID, because I had to run X number of ensembles. In fact, I am the most non-techno person. In fact, I said to my students, even if I am starting, I'm conducting a musical that I've never conducted before, this is my learning curve. But during COVID, that was my learning curve, because I am so such a technophobe. But I learned to use smart music, and I ran a Zoom class, 3 rehearsals simultaneously, using smart music, Zoom, and the little ones used Seesaw, which was pre-recorded videos, those videos that I was able to show them. And the great thing about that is because they just played the video 10 times. And it was like, wow, okay, that's like me standing there saying it 10 times. Awesome. I didn't have to stand there and say it 10 times. You go. But smart music is what is it, a platform? I don't know what it is. But anyway, you pay a subscription, and there are oodles and oodles and oodles and more and more and more pieces for violin, for viola, for cello, for bass. There are ensemble pieces. So what I used it for was, I would say, okay, today we're doing Brian Balmager's Rhythm Dances. You're playing second violin. You log in as a second violinist. Here's your second violin part. Boom, up it comes. It's too fast. Slow it down. I don't want to hear the rest of the orchestra because I'm learning my own part. Okay, turn the rest of the orchestra down. Airplane jelly dot. I like airplane jelly. Here's your music. That's what you're up to. Okay, so that sort of was moving them along, and I found that really, really good. But there were so many other pieces, and I think Alfred's just put up a new bunch of pieces that they've had all their composers write. I wrote 3 or 4 new pieces. Some of them are ensemble, some of them are solo instrument pieces. So there's loads of stuff up. There's a lot of the Suzuki repertoires up there as well. So you can play along with the accompaniment. You can slow the accompaniment down. You can speed it up. You can, turn it off, turn it on, whatever. There are lots of options. So that's another thing.
Yeah, it's a huge motivating tool for those students who are perhaps self-driven, or just, like what you said right at the start, Loretta, was that students get frustrated learning the instrument, but they want to be playing the instrument. And this is for those kids as well. This is something they can be doing in their own time as well. And that's an awesome skill. They've got an accompaniment. They can hear the harmony, because if you're only a private student and you don't have a teacher who plays piano, or you don't play piano, they really get to hear the full parts. And yeah, it's great. It's a great skill.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are loads of other things like that. It's just that because I'm such a technophobe, I don't know them. But I'm sure that some of the younger teachers are all over that stuff. So you've just got to be. I mean, I'm mindful of overloading busy children, because let's face it, a lot of kids now, music is what they do alongside ballet and netball and this and that, and there are so many activities that they're doing. So I'm mindful of that. However, I'm allergic to, I will learn my list A, my list B, my list C, my extra list, my extras, and that's all I have to do all year. So there has to be that wide, and I won't let them choose. Well, what pieces am I doing for my exam? I don't know yet, because we haven't learnt everything yet. My favorite word, yet.
Yet, yeah. Back to growth mindset again. Well, I'm very aware that we've come to the hour, and so I think I'm going to do a wrap-up, if that's all right with everybody, unless somebody's got something enormously important or urgent to share. Thanks, this is interesting. Was thinking more about music theory. Oh, sorry, Helen, we wasted all of that time. We could have been talking about theory. But there are, you sort of listed all of the main players in the theory books anyway. But I did have a chat to AMEB today. I was on the phone to them, and they are looking at introducing some pre-activities for book 1. So if you're doing AMEB theory book 1, but perhaps a little bit advanced for your tiny beginners, because we have so many tiny beginners, they are in the process of developing resources for that. So that's exciting. I think that's exciting.
And I'll just add to that, Helen, it probably depends on the age of that beginner. So I would, I tend to cover a lot of the theory in the lesson. I always make sure I have a practice record book. This is a one-on-one student, okay, not those kids out there, because I'm probably relying with my classroom group, having done a certain amount of that in the classroom, and they did. I was lucky. But with my one-on-one students, most of that I will cover in their lesson. I can probably do that in right up to grade 3 level violin or viola. But beyond that, then yes, they probably do need something a little bit extra. And then by that stage, they're able to do that. Having said that, my grandson learning piano is doing theory from day one. I think piano teachers tend to do that very, very well.
Yeah,
So
so
maybe,
visual, isn't it? So laid out, everything's laid out there.
yeah. Well, that's right. That's right. And a lot of what we do, mind you, having said that, and I haven't got it here, but I have a cheap piano with the keyboard, and then A sharp, B flat, F sharp, G flat, whatever, written on the keyboard, and I always refer to that and go, have a look on the keyboard there. What can you see? What is that note? That is low first finger on the A string. And they and often, because often they'll play B flat on the A string, low first finger on any given instrument, and say, oh, that's B sharp. And then you go, well, have a look at that. Is it lower than B and higher than A? So there are its two names. So I love the cheap keyboard. And of course, those of you who have seen me present before, I rave on about patterns in violin and viola playing in particular. I cannot stress how important it is to understand the concept of tones and semitones and where that semitone is in the hand. But we're talking about beginners. So in beginners, we're only using one pattern in that first year. And so after that first year, when we're probably heading towards a preliminary level, then we have to introduce that second pattern and maybe even the third pattern, but not in beginner, one pattern only.
It's quite enough to navigate without those little
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, Loreta, thank you so much for wagging today, for joining us in our
I'm such a dag.
in our
I'm
string
such a
wag.
dag.
Do you know we've really absolutely, like, I've learnt heaps and heaps. I want to listen back to this recording. I'm actually really glad I recorded it. I'm glad someone suggested it, because I might not have remembered that we could do that. It's a caffeine shot of inspiration. I don't know many more people that talk faster than me and more words, but you are definitely that person, and I love you for it, because there's so much to share and so much goodwill that you
Italian, Greek,
Yeah, I think
Italian, Greek, that's what we do.
something to do with that, as well as lots of things to do in a short amount of time. So thank you enormously. Can we just give, like, this is like Auslan, I do Auslan, and this is the Auslan wave, and congratulations and thank you.
And clap, that means clap too.
Yeah. Clapping, yep, that's the
I
one.
have one of my sisters is an Auslan teacher. She was born deaf, but she now is an Auslan teacher.
Yeah, so yeah, I teach music on Fridays with Auslan, so that's kind of another fun thing to do. Our next string wag, if you're interested, is on the 17th of May, and it's going to be an actual chin wag, because Stephen Chin is going to join me, and we're going to chat about intonation and tone and musical intent, and developing pathways to take students from intermediate to diploma level. So I'll send you out all things. Once you're on my list, I make sure that I'll send you all the things. You can always unsubscribe from lists, of course, but it's good to know what's going on, and then you have the choice. And if you know somebody that might want to, do one of these sessions, or maybe you want to do one of these sessions, be in touch, because we've all got lots and lots of different things to share. And I just want to thank you all for coming along. I'm going to send you all the link to this as well, so that you can listen to it all over again if you want to, and take some notes. So thanks so much for joining you. I know here in Victoria and Sydney it's quite late now, so it's 9:11, so it's probably time to go. But thanks everybody, you've been amazing, and thank you, Loreta. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Karen. That was fantastic.
Good on you.
And what a great initiative. Don't you agree, everyone? There's so much we're going to be learning over these next sessions. Thank you.